right, another round of applause for Cello. And he has a great Windows 95 shirt, I would just like to add. All right, we just have a few more speakers left for today. So joining us next on stage is Nicolas Weber. He's the co-founder of the Meta Game Hub DAO. Nicolas, come on down.
Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. Cool. Okay, so perfect, guys. So welcome. My name is Nicolas, and today I'll be speaking to you about the convergence of DeFi and the metaverse. Before I begin, let me clarify maybe a couple of aspects, because when we talk about the metaverse, what I realized in this space is that it can be a bit confusing, right? What really is the metaverse? And the metaverse really has the power to onboard the masses, in my opinion, when it comes to the crypto space, right? Because people that come from like the crypto space and have been around it for a long time, like most people here probably, you know, we leverage the tools, we understand them, we don't need to necessarily have the education or the feasible tools. But really when we want to foster and attain mainstream adoption, we need tools that actually are intuitive and where people don't necessarily have to understand that we're talking about crypto, right? And this is where the metaverse can really be a key core pillar to actually make crypto feasible without even having to understand the, let's say, dynamics behind it from the tech side and all the respective math stuff when it comes to DeFi. So that's the power of the metaverse, right? But really, what is the metaverse? And here I think you have to kind of have a term that says, okay, we call it not necessarily the metaverse per se, because I don't believe there's going to be one metaverse to rule them all, so to say, right? Maybe Facebook is trying it now, but we have to do our best to really, you know, fight this and foster the decentralization. And we should maybe talk a bit more about the open metaverse, right? Where there is going to be certain niche metaverses in this open metaverse, such as Decentraland, the Sandbox, who have their respective purpose, their niche, right? So Decentraland is focusing on social and business interaction a bit more. The Sandbox is focusing on gaming, voxelized gaming, kind of in the Minecraft style. So each of these metaverses, so to say, has their niche. And this is the power of the open metaverse. And if we think about it, within each of these metaverses, the underlying infrastructure is tokenized, right? All the value is tokenized. But so far, it's not really there yet where we can integrate these assets, which is really a billion or trillion-dollar industry if we really believe in the power of the metaverse, right, into the DeFi space. And at Meta Game Hub, this is something we want to solve, right? But before I dive into this, let me start a bit with some of the issues that we've defined, right, within the metaverse space. The core metaverse assets nowadays are NFTs, right? So let me begin maybe with this. Because at Meta Game Hub DAO, we focus also on, for instance, NFTs such as lands, which is virtual real estate, right? And one aspect that we defined is illiquidity, obviously. This is something that's gradually fading away because obviously there's a lot of money flowing into this space, but generally still it's omnipresent because it's obviously NFTs and the metaverse, which is such a powerful asset, are still not really liquid, right, when it comes to trading. But when it comes to really the core issue, it is the lack of transparency, actually. Because this lack of transparency stems from actually two parts, right? On the one hand, from the founders or the, let's say, more or less centralized still players within the metaverse, the originators that build the metaverses. And on the other hand, from the secondary market. From the builders of these metaverses, right, the lack of transparency stems from kind of behind-the-back private sales that happen, you know, within respective metaverses, which kind of show that the metaverse still, as it is right now, is more centralized, right? So there's a huge lack of transparency. And even if you are part of these behind-the-door trades, then there's still an issue when it comes to being part there because, for instance, a lot of these trades happen within the native metaverse currency. And with this currency, it increases significantly in the price, then also the respective lands that you purchase for that set amount increase in price. So it's a 100% correlation. And in my opinion, it doesn't really make sense to say virtual real estate is 100% correlated to a volatile asset, such as generally a token, right? So that's one issue. And on the other hand, when it comes to the secondary market, there's also a huge lack of transparency because obviously, apart from the floor price and human set or individual set prices, there's not a clear definition when it comes to the pricing. So obviously, that's a huge issue when we want to actually onboard these NFTs into the DeFi space. This all kind of leads also to the fact that it's very inefficient still. when it comes to the Metaverse NFTs and the respective pricing and the utilization thereof, right? Another aspect that we define is the limited access. Because right now, if we look at the land prices, for instance, in respective metaverses, these prices are skyrocketing, right? There's sometimes you pay 50, 100, 150, or even more $1,000 just for one NFT, right? Which at times is cool and interesting to follow, but on the other hand, it's something that really will not mean that mainstream can follow, because obviously we don't want the retail investors just to be consumers in this ecosystem. We want them to be owners, right? So that's also a core aspect that I would highlight from that part. And lastly, the last two aspects are actually the limited valuation, which is one of the core aspects that we focus on at MetaGameHub, because there's no clear pricing, which kind of is a result of the above points, and the limited utility, because obviously you cannot really integrate these tools into DeFi. And trust me, it's still much easier, or it will be still much easier to integrate metaverse-based assets into DeFi than, let's say, real-world assets, because I've spent my fair share of time in the security token space as well, and it's quite a hustle and not really worth it to focus too much on that right now, at least. Next, let me talk a bit quickly in a nutshell of how we approach this, and I'll dive into deeper detail in this in a second. So we are building a holistic ecosystem of utility, governance, and data. Data is something that I would really like to highlight, because at the end of the day, everything is data, right? When it comes to the information, the trades, and the respective value. So that's something that we also want to highlight when it comes to this. Some even talk about the metaverse and the dataverse, right? So another aspect that we focus on is the collaborative governance of the respective metaverse NFTs. And this will allow then even people that usually wouldn't have access to attain, to own these respective NFTs, to at least be part of fostering the respective development within this space, right? And not necessarily have to invest 50 to 100,000 into these NFTs. This will allow then the development, as well as building GameFi ecosystems on top of this, which are not coming from centralized parties, but actually are emerging and evolving from a DAO. Here, for instance, we work together with the university in Aachen in Germany, where they are actually building in Decentraland and Sandbox right now certain ecosystems that can be leveraged in the future. Let's dive a bit deeper into the data aspect. So from the data aspect, one thing that I would like to highlight again is that the data itself, which stems from a pricing algorithm that we've developed for Metaverse NFTs, the MVP is focusing on sandbox lands, is governed in a decentralized fashion, right? So it's governed by the DAO. And it can then be leveraged on and off-chain data marketplaces. Let's forget about the off-chain marketplaces for a second, because I think we don't have to worry too much about them. But let's focus about two that we're actually working with, the Ocean Protocol and Chainlink. So what we do is basically we leverage this data sets, right? And on the one hand, we sell this data on the Ocean Protocol marketplace, which will then obviously generate revenue for the DAO treasury. And on the other hand, we can also sell the pricing data for specific NFTs on the Chainlink marketplace, which then allow people to actually leverage this, for instance, in Nft Pools, and also then further foster the development within the metaverse. Let's dive a bit deeper into the Ocean Protocol part, because I must say I'm a big fan of it, right? Because at the end of the day, what is Ocean Protocol? For those that don't know, right? It's, in a nutshell, a DEX for data. And that's quite interesting, right? So basically, we leverage the pricing algorithm's data. You can open a data pool, for instance, let's say a Sandbox NFT pool, which has data sets from Sandbox lands, which are continuously updated. So you open this data pool with the MGH data token, as well as the Ocean token. And then it's basically a liquidity pool at the end of the day, where then users can come, extract the data by purchasing the data tokens and providing Ocean tokens, which are then, so to say, the rewards which go back to the DAO treasury. So this is the way that we approach this from the data aspect when it comes to the Ocean Protocol. And let's dive a bit deeper into this even further. And I know this is not necessarily about Cosmos yet, but we'll definitely get there. The way that we do this with Ocean Protocol is that we bridge the MGH utility token, which is currently still on the Ethereum chain, to Polygon, right? Because obviously the Ocean Protocol marketplace is multi-chain, and Polygon is, let's say, one of the most feasible approaches when it comes to this. So we bridge it to Polygon, where you can then swap the MGH token on Polygon, the utility token, with the MGH data token, right? So on the one hand, you can purchase the data token directly from the Ocean marketplace, but on the other hand, we obviously wanted to also provide, let's say, our our community members that have the utility token the access directly to the data, right? By not having to adhere to the Ocean Protocol market standards, but actually just swapping it, so to say, the utility and the data token. The proceeds then go to the DAO treasury, which can then be reinvested, for instance, to further acquire lands within the metaverse and foster the development, as well as, for instance, also buyback schemes, so to say, which then allow you to burn MGH tokens and further foster the appreciation there. So that's one aspect that we focus on from the data aspect, and I think, you know, it's really crucial to highlight this because, you know, data is the all of our generation, and it's something that we've forgotten about too long, and you know, we see the power that the metaverse has when it comes to data, even with players such as Facebook, you know, joining the race there and rebranding themselves to Meta. And obviously, they will try to leverage this data that is generated there from people spending many hours per day within that space. And we need to have decentralized tools to actually monetize, to still monetize the data, but also to have, you know, the sovereignty over the data ourselves, or at least in the decentralized spirit. Another aspect that this allows, for instance, which we are currently building, are NFT pools. I mean, NFT pools are not something new. At the end of the day, it's just collateralizing an NFT and receiving something in return, right? But the thing with NFT pools is, how can you really collateralize an NFT for a loan if you don't really have a clear pricing standard? And this is, again, where Algorand comes to play, which allows, you know, to feed the data to the oracle, which then provides the on-chain data to the pool of the fair price based on algorithm, not human emotion of the respective NFT. So that's a cool thing, right? Because then at the end of the day, it's not based on the, let's say, emotions or some auction style, you know, open sea trades where people inflate the prices, but actually on an algorithm. So that's something that actually then also makes, let's say, high value and attractive NFTs more feasible for the people, right? Because from these NFT pools, you receive the NFT pool tokens, which are fungible tokens and can even be swapped or made available to other people, which then allow them, for instance, to take part in for instance, to track the price of the respective NFT pools of the NFTs that are locked there, right? So people can actually access these respective, you know, high-value NFTs, which makes them accessible for retail, and not only, let's say, crypto ways. Let's talk about a bit also what's possible right now, for instance. If you go to metagameupdao.io/valuation, you can find the following tool here. This is a tool that we launched a couple of weeks ago, which is focusing on the sandbox land. So we work with the guys from the sandbox for this, where basically someone that either wants to acquire land in the sandbox, that just wants to check the price from their respective land, or maybe wants to sell their land and find the respective price that they can list it for, can go to this tool, enter the respective token ID or the coordinates of the respective land, and then they receive, based on the algorithm, a fair price for their land, right? So either in ETH, in Sand, or in US dollar. The feedback from this tool was, I say, mixed. Because on the one hand, people like the tool a lot because it fosters the transparency. But on the other hand, there was obviously also people that didn't like it too much because they saw, okay, look, I maybe purchased my land for a bit too much. Maybe I'm listing it for too much, right? So people were also a bit unhappy to a certain extent because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's human emotions versus an algorithm. And at the end, and you know what I mean? So basically, it's kind of like also a trade-off that you have to make. And I think you have to generally differentiate when it comes to NFTs between the more financial NFTs, such as virtual real estate, which is lands, and NFTs that are used more in the form of art and therefore collectibles, and therefore the pricing is more individual, right? So therefore, when it comes to the lands, you really have to apply these different models to it. So now you probably ask yourselves, how do we actually evaluate these lands? So this is done, the user, and I'll just go through this quickly. If you have more questions on this, you can definitely reach out to us later. But just in a nutshell, basically the user requests the respective land valuation from the MGH app. It goes to the database. The historic data based on the daily median, based on neighboring lands within that land, is basically sent to neural networks under a certain set of preconditions, which then sends them back based on the prediction which is restored in respect to the daily median prices, right? And then the database basically leverages further aspects such as the CoinGecko and Etherscan API and automated scripts to actually continuously update the prices to provide that fair price for the for the respective NFTs. And something that we're currently proactively looking into is also how can we actually integrate more sentiment data into this, because when it comes to lands, right, it cannot just be prices and historic prices that we can average for the fair price. It also has to be sentiment data, for instance, which neighboring lands is it close to, right? For instance, is it close to a land of a bigger players such as Binance or Atari, which are quite popular, for instance, in the sandbox, or is it just in some corner where there's nothing else around it? So these type of aspects are also things that we look into. So if you're someone that's into algorithms, definitely feel free to reach out to us. So you probably ask yourselves, what does all of this mean to the customers? Because I talked about Ethereum, Ocean, Chainlink, Polygon, but not so much about Cosmos yet, right? But what this really means is something that we've, in the last couple of months, developed also with our friends at DeFi Times, who've done a great conference, so also props to them, right? Is something that we thought, okay, look, we have big fans of interoperability, and obviously the Cosmos ecosystem provides that interoperability to people that want to actually, not be maximalists within one ecosystem or one chain. So basically, what we want to do is the following. We want to launch our own, let's say, holistic dataverse within the Cosmos ecosystem. We will do that by by bridging actually the MGH token, the utility token, to Cosmos, launching our own chain there, which will then provide the respective NFT pricing data to, for instance, NFT marketplaces, DeFi protocols, generally hybrid smart contracts, Nft Pools, or the GameFi ecosystem. So all this will be possible, and this is something that we've actually made a governance proposal within our DAO, just so you see we are real. We did that a couple of days ago. It was approved on Snapshot, and basically now the next step for us will be to launch that chain. And from our side, as everyone is welcome in the decentralized space, we invite everyone to join us on this journey and actually be part of it. And therefore, if you have any questions, concerns, feedback, especially from the Cosmos space and the tech side, feel free to reach out to us. Everyone is welcome, and let's join the journey of decentralization together. Thank you, guys.